Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we are going to be reviewing Nightmare of Eden with the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, from Season 17. Now, this is an interesting one for me because it is one of the 3 Tom Baker stories that I hadn't seen before, so it was my first time watching this one. And I was curious to see which camp I would fall into, because Nightmare of Eden always seems to fall into 2 camps. The ones that think it's really bad, for whatever reason or another, they don't like it, they think it's a bad story, one of Tom Baker's worst. And then the other camp that seems to think it's underrated. I know Wingy Media likes that one. Then I've met a few other people who seem to think it's an underrated one. And I can say, after having watched it, I do want to note, I watched it with the enhanced effects. I watched about the first 4 or 5 minutes of it with the regular effects. And then I decided I wanted to do this a different way, because usually that's what I've always done. I've watched a story with its original effects and then gone back and rewatched it with its updated effects, if it has them. But this time I wanted to watch it with the updated effects, because I was curious. My thing on this one has always been that the story was decent, but the effects held it back, the production held it back. So I wanted to watch it with updated effects to see what my initial thoughts would be of it. And having watched it, I think I fall into the latter camp, the ones that think it's underrated. I enjoyed the story. I don't think it's essential Doctor Who, but I found the story engaging and I liked it. First off, I actually liked the set design. I know it's completely studio bound, and I know that this one was done on a budget because they were banking money for Shada. And so this one was kind of done on the cheap. But I actually really like the luxury liner set. It has different areas. Like, you have the more industrial looking areas, which is meant for like more like the crew, with the hallways with like the yellow and black tape and stuff. It looks like a sterilized business ship crew area. To me, it fits. Then you have the more luxury looking areas like guest rooms and stuff with the kind of tan light in it. I like how different those areas are. How different those areas of the ship are. I really like that. I thought the bridge looked pretty good for what it was, even though the buttons don't actually press when he's pushing on them. It's weird. The smaller ship is small, which it should be. It's a much smaller ship. It's fine. The jungle set is fine. I mean, it's not as good as, like, you know, the jungle set from Planet of Evil, of course, but it's fine for a jungle set, especially since we don't really see it a lot. The little hut, the kind of hut they go into when they're on Eden, is fine. I mean, they're not there much; they're just there, I think, for that one scene, so it's fine. I really enjoyed the set design, knowing especially the budget crunch they were in for this story. I think they pulled it off pretty well. So I did want to say I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked the set design, considering this story's reputation. Tom Baker is great in this. I love Tom Baker. He is on fire in this. He is very much his Season 17 witty self, which I love that. I really like some of his lines here, like when he's talking about working for the galactic group he's pretending to work for, and the captain's like, they've been closed for 20 years. I wonder why I haven't been paid. That's not good enough. You know, that's exactly what I was saying. I just love his witty retorts and how they just come just like that. I absolutely love that. And then when the mandrills are beating it up and he's like, oh, my fingers, oh, my legs, oh, my everything. It had me laughing. And there's several other times I can't quite think of where his little one-liners and his dialogue and his wit had me chuckling. Like when he first ends up on the smaller ship and he's looking at the little ray gun thing. I forget what it is he says there, but he says like 3 lines. And the first 2 are kind of normal, but the third one's humorous. I can't remember what it is he says, but I thought it was funny. There's a lot of him being extremely clever and witty in this, and I like that. When he's talking to K9, it's like, oh, you just have to use logic for everything, don't you? I love that. I like that K9 has a lot to do in this story. He's not really sidelined. I think the flat corridor halls are really well suited for him. Of course, it always bugs me a little in Season 17 that it's not John Leeson voicing K9. That's always a slight little nitpick I have. I mean, David's fine, but I do much prefer John. But it's nice to have K9 have stuff to do, to see him actually have an impactful part in the story, which I like. I think Lala Ward's good as Romana in this. I don't like her outfit. I think Lala made it herself, and it's fine in and of itself, but it doesn't look appropriate to the situation. That looks like more like something you would go to sleep in, like a nightgown or something. Like you're about to go to bed. It doesn't look like something she should be wearing on an adventure. I don't know why, but like the whole time of the story, it's just bugging me that it looks out of place. But she's fine. It's nice that Romana gets some fun stuff to do here. I enjoyed that. The guest cast, for the most part, I like. The one guy with the glasses, the scientist, Tristan, is that his name? I don't like this weird voice he's using. I like the way they call it. One of the guys mentions it in Behind the Sofa. It's like a mechanical German voice. It's very off-putting because it doesn't feel natural. It feels like an actor trying to do a voice. So whenever he talks, it always puts me off. His outfit is very out there. I like the sunglasses. I like the sunglasses a lot. I don't know why you wear sunglasses on a spaceship, but I like them. But the rest of the outfit doesn't seem very scientist-like. It's like they just grabbed some costumes from somewhere and put it on, or they just told him to show up, in whatever they wanted, and that's what he showed up to work in. I think the actress playing his assistant, she's fine. I like her in it. The guy who's trapped on Eden, I like him in it. I think the navigator and the captain are fine. We don't see the navigator much, but he does his job well. I think the captain's done really well. I kind of wish we knew what happened to him. I never realized when he gets shot at that last point we see him if he got killed or stunned. I assumed he was stunned, but we never see him after he's stunned, so I never quite know. But I liked him. He did a good job. He was great before he got drugged, and then after he got drugged, still puts in a good performance. That scene when he's seeing the mandrills mauling everybody and he's just laughing about it, that's crazy. It's kind of crazy. The mandrills, I like their helmets. Their costumes aren't bad. Like, I've seen worse. I really like the helmets with the glowing eyes. The bodies are okay. They're fine. I can tolerate them. My problem with the mandrills is more their choreography. Like, whenever they're fighting and killing people, there's no blood on their claws or anything, but it's classic Who. You accept that. But sometimes it's like they knock somebody down and that person doesn't move again. A lot of the physical choreography in this story is very bad. It's my biggest nitpick. Like, when some of the blocking is a little weird, but some of the fighting, like anytime the mandrills are killing people, you kind of got to have a willing suspension of disbelief here. Because it doesn't look very convincing. And a lot of times when they're fighting guards, it doesn't look convincing. There's some other moments that are escaping me, but the mandrills killing people really stuck in my mind. There's some other parts, though, where there's some physical fighting and stuff going on where it looks really fake. And some of the blocking looks fake. And then there's one point where Tom's talking about the mandrill, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it, it's dead. And you can still hear it breathing and see its chest moving, even though he says it's dead. And then, of course, it ends up getting back up later in the story. As for the story itself, I liked the story. I thought the story was neat. I think it's interesting that especially classic Doctor Who, did a drug story, a story about drugs and the dangers of drugs and addiction and all that. And it's not subtle. I mean, it's obviously not subtle. I mean, there are times when classic Who could be political without being subtle. But it never overtakes the story like some people might argue it does in modern series, especially the current era. For me, I never feel like the drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are bad are overtaking the story. And I don't have Tom Baker at the very end of the story looking directly at the camera going, drugs are bad, like, say, Orphan 55. They do it because you see the effects of the drugs being bad. You see the people getting addicted and how they're all carefree and how dangerous them being carefree is, as that's what causes the accident with the ships to collide in the first place. And then seeing the withdrawal and what that does to a person and their need to have the drug and what that can lead to. The story shows us that. So it doesn't have to just tell us that with a big exposition dump at the end of the story, like, again, Orphan 55. So it's neat to see Doctor Who do that, and I like the reveal of where the drug comes from and how it's tied in with the mandrills. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. I knew there was supposed to be a connection there, but I didn't know what it was, and I found that fascinating. I found that interesting. It's a neat way of how they were smuggling it. I like not knowing who was responsible till close to the end. Like, I figured the guy from the other ship, spoiler alert, I knew the guy from the other ship was involved fairly early on, or at least I suspected it, but knowing that the scientist was involved, I wasn't sure of until close to the end, when I was like, okay, so it is him. All right. And the way Tom catches them at the end, I think, is clever. How he just, even though they escape, he uses the little thing to beam them back and just plucks them right out. I love some more of Tom's dialogue when the scientist is like, I was just using it to fund my research. You understand, right? And Tom's just like, go away. And the guy starts to talk again, and he's like, and he doesn't even look at him. Tom's just like, go away. The way Tom does that line, both times he says it, is phenomenal. And another reason why I just love me some Tom Baker. He's so good in this story. My fingers, my legs, my everything. I love that. I guess it understands why that coat of his gets tore up, and I don't think we ever see it again. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not as good as, say, anything from Season 12 or 13. It isn't. Season 12, even Android Invasion's a better story, I'll say that. Even though I think Android Invasion's the weakest of Season 13, it's still better than this story. But I think the story for Nightmare of Eden is good. I enjoy the story. And I think the execution for the most part works. I can't quite get over the glitter on the police uniforms like some of the people from behind the scenes. It's definitely out there. And there are times when the budget does kind of hurt it. But, like, I watched the updated version of it, but I did watch the Behind the Sofa. So watching the Behind the Sofa, I got to see some of the original effects. Like, K9's laser blast, I've seen enough stories before I know what it looks like, so of course I prefer the updated version of it. But the guards' guns, the original version of the guards' guns looked awful, like this black, dark, greenish bleh color. I didn't like it. The updated effect looks better. It's still not great because it's teal. I hate teal. Teal is like the most boring, uninteresting color ever made. That sort of green, sort of blue. Some people see it greenish, some people see it bluish. It's the most uninteresting color I've ever seen. But it's still better than what was originally there. So I like that they didn't necessarily update everything. Like when you see the ship separated by the lines, that still looks like the original effect. Some of the spaceship effects are brand new effects. Some of them just look like they've been tweaked. Like when you see the shuttle leaving the dock, they look like they just tweaked that slightly. Still looks like mostly the model effect. But I like that they updated the laser blast, the laser effects. Like when K9's cutting that hole in with his red laser, and then when he's welding it back, it uses the blue laser. I like that. So I do think those little quality of life improvements really make the story a lot better. Much like with Destiny of the Daleks, I like the updated effects on Destiny of the Daleks. So where the Movellans guns actually fire now. They didn't fire originally. They actually fire the blast. That adds a lot for me. Not everything has to be this massive Day of the Daleks, completely turn it around and make it a million times better level upgrade. It can be more like, Terror of the Autons, where a lot of it's just cleaning up the CSO work, which makes it much more watchable. These little quality of life improvements, which I think this story does really well, and really made it more watchable in my eyes, since the biggest complaint I hear about it is the production and the tight budget. I think these enhanced effects really help and let you enjoy the story for what it is. I like the way one of my, I think it was one of my subscribers and one of my top tier patrons actually, the way he was describing, I think it was him, was describing Nightmare of Eden one time. He said something along the lines of, it's a good script trying to claw its way out of a bad production, I think is how he phrased it. And I can see that. Although, like I said, a lot of the production works for me for the most part. I enjoyed this story. It's not the best one of Season 17 by far. But I'd put it up there with like Destiny of the Daleks. I think it has a good message. It doesn't feel quite so over the top with it. It's definitely not subtle, but again, I don't think it gets in the way of the story the political point is trying to push. The little aside toward humans at the end was kind of unnecessary, but it's fine. The one about only one animal deserves to be in electric cages. We shouldn't tell them, should we, K9? No, mistress. Obviously it's talking about humans. So that kind of made me roll my eyes. But that's really about it. I like Nightmare of Eden. I thought it was a nice watch. I really enjoyed it. I would like to know what you think of the story, and have you seen it with the updated effects on the Season 17 box set? If you haven't, you should take a look at it. So comment down below and let me know what you think. I do think if you haven't watched the story in a while, it deserves a reevaluation with the updated effects to see if that kind of gives it that quality of life improvement for you. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to contribute to what I do. There is a link to that down in the description below. An early edit of my ranking of the regenerations is available as an early access exclusive on my Patreon right now. The regular video will be coming probably in a couple weeks, which has been fully edited. But if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out. My entry-level tier is only $2 a month, and some of the higher-level tiers get you access to more stuff, polls to vote in, exclusive videos, early access, etc., etc. I want to give a special shout-out to two of my top-tier patrons, Stephen Crane and the Fifth Doctor. I really appreciate their support, as I appreciate the support of all of my patrons and all of my subscribers. So again, a link to that is down in the description below. I also have a P.O. box. If there's anything you would like to send me, Doctor Who related, sci-fi related, or otherwise, anything you would like me to unbox and look at and do a review of, check out my P.O. box down in the description below. A link to my Amazon wish list is down there as well if you'd like to check that out. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.